Cattle mutilation expert Linda Howe arrived at the ranch in Farnham, Nebraska to begin the investigation of the unusual death of Larry Jurgen's cow. The location was remote and hard to access, but once there, Howe approached slowly, making preliminary observations through the lens of her camera.
I am on a north-south axis with this animal. One of the interesting things is, this is a 360-degree, surrounded by hills. Whatever happened in here, it could operate without anybody seeing.
She was looking for the classic indications of an authentic mutilation. As she stepped around fairly fresh cow dung, indicating the herd had been there a few days ago, she noted the far distance being maintained by other cattle at the time. Further documentation was made of the area and the orientation of the body. The cow lay dead for nearly a week. Then she went in for a closer look.
The ears are intact, so this one is one of the few in which the ear is not taken. You can tell even now with the collapse of the body in death that this was a very large, healthy animal, and she had given birth to a calf that had grown to 400 pounds, so she was a very healthy animal.
Despite days of decay and maggot infestation, there were no body parts or organs strewn about in a manner typically found when predators or scavengers strike. The remote settings, surgical precision, absence of evidence, no claims of responsibility, and the huge geographic area covered over decades have led some researchers to extraordinary conclusions.
Well, some people do make the connection that this is an extraterrestrial event, and really there's no evidence one way or the other. But then there's no evidence that humans are involved in this either. However, they do see UFOs in the area, and leads a lot of us to come to conclusions that this could possibly be aliens involved.
Does our government have these craft? And if they have the craft, do they have hard proof that that which is in the craft is involved with the animal mutilations?
If they exist, UFOs could account for the rumblings heard and the light seen in the sky. Or even the cattle mutilations.
By 1989, I had become personally convinced that extraterrestrial biological entities or something from outer space being involved. This was, in fact, the story.
A story that tells of spaceships that may have the technology to levitate cows up to the craft, perform the surgical excisions, and then let them plummet to the earth.
And when you find that the cow had dropped on its muscles, it's consistent with people who said they've seen animals drop from glowing discs in the sky to the ground.
Would aliens possess the technology capable of performing bloodless surgery with precision, a process that humans would have trouble carrying out?
Most of the cases that we find, the cause of death is exsanguination, complete loss of blood within the body. We don't have the surgical equipment that it takes to do that kind of thing. The kind of vacuum that would require to do that is just not available, even in hospitals, let alone in the field.
But even if extraterrestrials had the ability to conduct this long-term killing spree, is there a motivation?
Some people say that the ET's motivation behind this is genetics, that they're involved in our DNA. And cattle DNA is very similar to humans.
This suggests that aliens are harvesting bovine biology as part of a mission that serves some greater galactic purpose. One that is well beyond human understanding and is vital to alien survival.
They can use that genetic manipulation to fill in. It's not quite Jurassic Park, where you're skipping a few genetic codes to get to the dinosaurs from the amphibians, as they did in that film. But they do have unbelievable high technology when it comes to genetic mentality. So they can use cattle for their research and sometimes to fill in the gaps that they don't have enough human DNA for.
Also that human blood is transferable with cattle blood in emergencies. So there's enough similarity between us and the bovine to make me believe that there's some sort of research being done on our DNA.
The idea of aliens collecting blood from cows in order to extract DNA for some unfathomable genetic research easily attracts skeptics.
That extraterrestrials are doing animal mutilations is the least likely explanation.
Within veterinary circles, such theories may sound a bit too alien to be scientifically grounded.
I'm not aware of that at all, that there's that much similarity between human and bovine blood. A human has 46 chromosomes, a cow has 60 chromosomes, so there's a difference right there. Are they that closely related? I don't think so, but I don't know.
UFO believers aside, there are many who don't look that far for answers. They contend these mysterious mutilation occurrences are simply the work of pranksters or some dark cult ritual.
I have seen instances where animals were mutilated or maimed, but in all those instances, it was corroborated with law enforcement effort, people that it was actually the act of a mentally ill person. But otherwise, I've never seen an unexplained mutilation.
We've been 30 years, 40 years now of these abductions, and nobody's ever seen a human involved in this. There's never been a farmer come across somebody in the middle of some sort of a satanic ritual or something.
For the ranchers in the western prairie states, cattle mutilations are a loss of inventory and a loss of revenue. And they want some answers. By 1975, cattle mutilation mysteries were so prolific, Colorado Senator Floyd Haskell asked the U.S. government for help. In a request dated August 29, 1975, Haskell wrote, "I'm asking that the Federal Bureau of Investigation enter the case. Although the Colorado Bureau of Investigation has been investigating the incidents, the lack of central unified direction has frustrated the investigation."
The Colorado Bureau of Investigation got involved in this in the late 70s because there were so many complaints from farmers that they were losing their cattle. Well, this is their livelihood, and they're losing valuable cattle every day.
Haskell's letter warned, "It now appears that ranchers are arming themselves to protect their livestock and their families. Clearly, something must be done before somebody gets hurt."
They didn't really have an idea what was going on.
Before the whole animal mutilation craze happened, ranchers were just going out and finding dead animals and scratching their heads and saying, I guess old Betsy just keeled over and the predators got her.
In his reply to Senator Haskell, FBI Director Clarence Kelly wrote, "I regret to inform you that these actions do not constitute a violation of federal law, coming within the FBI's investigative jurisdiction." March 14, 1979, New Mexico Senator Harrison Schmitt, a former Apollo astronaut, called for a federal investigation citing the mutilation phenomena crossed state lines.
I think they really thought at one point that it could have alien involvement. They really, at the final conclusion of it all, they just really came to the point where they thought that it needed more investigation.
This led to the investigation headed by Kenneth Rommel, who retired from the FBI in May 1979, and shortly afterwards assumed the role of Director of Investigations for Operation Animal Mutilation for the state of New Mexico.
He looked at many cases, and he was fairly open-minded with his investigation from the report that I've read.
Rommel had hundreds of historical and current cases to investigate.
Somehow I think his opinion what happened changed throughout his tenure with the New Mexico government.
Cattle mutilation researcher Linda Howe had a first-hand experience with Rommel.
So we get into the office of Kenneth Rommel, and I'm there to do an interview as a reporter with an investigator working for the state of New Mexico. And we sit down and we're getting ready, and first thing he says to me, you know, I'm going to prove that this is nothing but predator.
After 1 year of research, Rommel submitted his final report. It stated, after laboriously weighing and analyzing the evidence, I have come to the conclusion that the vast majority of mutilations are caused by predators and scavengers.
All of the news media were doing stories about what is this mystery that is stalking the prairie.
The subject transitioned from a rural myth to front-page headlines. News reports elevated the phrase cattle mutilation into the lexicon for strange, unexplained, and paranormal research. Cattle mutilations, like most UFO-related phenomena, have lurked in the shadows of U.S. government conspiracies since the days of the Roswell incident.
It's hard to imagine why the United States government, for any reason, would go out and mutilate cattle. I cannot imagine why. And if they did so, why they would do so in a way that seems to mimic the work of predators.
The government theory doesn't make sense because the head of the Colorado Bureau of Investigation had said to me, if the CIA, NSA, DIA, FBI, if they were all involved in animal mutilations for some covert government project, they just go out and buy what they needed. They just take them to one of the military bases. They would do whatever they're going to do, and no one would know.